Hi, I'm Marshall Goldsmith, and I'm about to have a productive conversation with Mike Vardy.
Welcome to A Productive Conversation. I'm Mike Vardy, and on this episode, I'm joined by Marshall Goldsmith. He's returning to the show. If you had a chance to listen to the previous episode, Flashback Friday episode, you would have heard that conversation. What is Marshall working on these days? Well, he's one of the top leadership thinkers in the world. And in this episode, we're really going to explore how he's using AI to share his legacy. We discuss the concepts of triggers in productivity, which is something that he knows quite a bit about since he wrote the book Triggers, and also Marshall's mission to help others lead better lives. So without further ado, let's dive into this fresh new conversation with Marshall Goldsmith. Enjoy. Marshall, thanks so much for taking the time to join me today. I really appreciate you being here. It's a return episode. We've spoken with you before. And again, for those that are unfamiliar with you and your work, and maybe they haven't listened to the previous episode, can you just share a little bit about what brought you to the dance here today?
Yeah, I'm Marshall. I went to undergraduate school, a little engineering school, Rose-Hulman Institute of Technology, got an MBA at Indiana U, PhD at UCLA, was a college professor and dean. And then for 47 years, I've done three things. I've traveled all about the world speaking and teaching. So I love speaking and teaching, got ranked #1 leadership thinker in the world. So I enjoy that. I've been to 102 countries. I'm coach executives. I've been the coach of the CEO of the World Bank and the Rockefeller Foundation and the Olympic Committee and Ford and Pfizer and Glaxo and people from all around the world. I love coaching because that's where I learn everything. And then finally, I write and edit books or articles. I've done 57 books. I've done 4 New York Times bestsellers, sold about 3 million books. And most of my books were purchased by my mother, my father, and my relatives. I've done a bunch of books. Most of them nobody bought, but a few of them a whole bunch of people bought.
So we have we have stuff in common then.
My most famous book is What Got You Here Won't Get You There, which sold a zillion copies.
And Triggers, right? Triggers is another one, right?
Triggers. It's also a New York Times #1 bestseller.
Yeah, and that's one I look to a lot because I think triggers are really important. We need to pay attention to them. But what I want people to pay attention today is, kind of the embracing that you've done and your team have done with a fairly new mainstream technology. It's been around for a while, but it's definitely been in the zeitgeist more so recently, and that's AI. I've recently had conversations with people about the role of AI and productivity and time management and all that stuff. What led you to kind of go really dig deeper and even go maybe above and beyond when it comes to AI as it's emerged as something that people can fairly easily access at this point?
Well, for years, I've wanted to give away everything I know to as many people as I can for free. I mean, now I'm 75. What am I saving this stuff up for, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I want to give away as much as I can to as many people as I can for free that hopefully they can use now or even after I'm no longer here. I've tried to do this for 20 years, I'd say with unmitigated failure. I tried interactive video, and some boxes that cost thousands of dollars and didn't work and were clunky. I've tried branching techniques, all kinds of stuff. Fail, 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 fail. Just until recently, the last year and a half, I've got something that actually works and is mind-boggling. So I'm very, very fortunate. I now have something called MarshallGoldsmith.ai. I want everyone listening, go ahead and go to this. Marshall Goldsmith, my name, Marshall has 2 L's, Goldsmith.ai is free. So I'm giving everything away I know. It's free. It's been such a fun experiment. So I'm happy to talk about the journey I've been on. I've learned a ton. I put hundreds of hours in this too. So for me, this is a huge deal. And I just feel very, very fortunate to be able to do it.
Now, since you mentioned age, 75, we're none of us are getting out of here alive. Father Time is undefeated. So I imagine that, and I think more people are starting, like journals is a good example of this. Like look at Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, right? Like he didn't have a publishing deal with Penguin or HarperCollins. That journal was for himself. And luckily we get the benefits of his insight as well as many others. I mean, I'm looking right now at a book called The Assassin's Cloak, which is a series of journal entries, most popular journal entries over, many, many, many years. And to me, that this almost can represent kind of like a journal to a degree of your knowledge, like the wealth, and almost like an encyclopedia. This to me is probably the future in a lot of ways, of where people can continuously share their information in a, like you pointed out, a very easy and accessible way, where they don't necessarily have to go and read triggers or some of your other works. They can get kind of all of it in one stop. So to me, it's efficient, but it's also, it shows that, again, at 75, you're not afraid of embracing technology like so many people in that age group might go, whoa, 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 I don't trust, that the banking application is going to necessarily keep my information private, so to speak.
Yeah, I think this is a very good point. Now, I'm not naive. I wrote a book called The Community of the Future many years ago, and I said, within 25 years, there's going to be something like instant download TV quality audio transmission over something which is today called the internet. And when that happens, media addiction will exceed drug addiction and alcohol addiction combined as a social problem. Well, we're already there. Media addiction is a complete and unmitigated disaster. Unfortunately, I was right. Well, look, I'm very familiar with what can go wrong with these things. On the other hand, my attitude is, let's do something good here. By the way, this train has left the station. I could be some old man. Wah, wah, wah. I don't like new things. This new technology is terrible. Shut up. The train's left. It's going to happen anyway. Option A, get with the plan, or option B, just be quiet. So do some good. I feel let's do a little good here. Why not?
So before we came into the conversation, I had you in the green room and you shared with me an audio piece. And I want to kind of expand on that a little bit, because I know that this is, again, it's a perfect segue, because the embracement of technology and so on and so forth. Again, if you're listening to this on audio, it's going to work for you no matter what. Even if you're watching on video, you're going to be able to kind of see Marshall kind of get things ready. But can you explain what you're about to share and how it relates to this project, this initiative that you put forward?
Happiness is an inside job. Don't expect the world to make you happy. That's a recipe for disappointment. The key is to take responsibility for your own happiness. Here are a few suggestions. First, focus on gratitude, not grievance. Write down 3 things you're grateful for each day. It trains your brain to scan for the positives. Second, do small acts of kindness. Research shows that helping others gives us a boost of dopamine and serotonin, but don't do it for the chemical reward. Do it to be a mensch. Now, this goes on and on and on. You can ask my computer bot pretty much anything. It will give you answer in my voice. And to make it even more interesting, now it's going to be available in 45 languages.
Excellent. Now, again, if you're watching the video, again, this is new technology, so there may be a little bit of a mismatch with voice and that, but you're going to catch up. Yeah, I mean, so if you're watching the video, sure, I think if Marshall was to speak now, I think the audio and the mouth and the picture, the voice and the vision are aligned. But that was fascinating. So what is that? Like, how is that happening? Is that happening right on MarshallGoldsmith.ai? It's happening right in there, right?
That was this moment.
Yeah. That's excellent. 45 languages. So because people learn differently, right? Like, that's the other thing too, is I think we need to, and literally just before this conversation, during the, I was kind of talking to Mitu Storoni about this at the end. We're talking about like Marshall McLuhan's "The medium is the message," Marshall McLuhan quote. And it's like the idea of people learn differently. So what you've done here is you've kind of given people the ability to learn either by just reading it or by listening to you, right?
Either way. And, what I love about this is you can ask any question you want to ask.
Let's walk through the building of this, because for somebody that is sitting back going, how did this happen? How does it how does it know, based on the questions that you ask, which could be anything, as you pointed out, to like what are some of the mechanics going on maybe behind the scenes that allow it to kind of give you the answers that are, for lack of a better term, spot on? Because we know that if you ask the wrong questions in certain bits of artificial intelligence technology, you may not get A, the right answers, or B, it may not understand you.
Excellent points. I've spent, as I said, hundreds of hours on this. First, I've taken my books and articles and put the highlights of all my books and articles in this. Then I've actually used other AI bots to train my AI bot. So what I'll do is, for example, I like the Claude AI bot.
Yep.
I'll say, if you ask it a question it can't answer, I find out. I say, well, I should have been able to answer that question. I can then go to the Claude bot and say, Claude bot, how would Marshall Goldsmith answer this question? Yeah, it'll give me a very long answer. Sometimes good, sometimes not so good. I take the parts that work and I use it as part of the training for my own AI bot. So I've been using other AI bots to train my AI bot. One, two, I just keep coming up with ideas. But I want to tell you, it has gone way beyond any expectation I ever had. Let me tell you what's happened. My original goal was I would put this thing together and it would be able to answer about 80% of the questions you ask me as well or better than me. That's gone. It can answer any question almost better than me, often lots better than me, and faster. And it can answer questions I couldn't answer. Let me describe this.
Sure.
My daughter, Kelly, I'm very proud of my daughter. She's a PhD from Yale, and she's a endowed chair professor here at Vanderbilt. And she's going to trick my computer bot. So she says, Marshall bot, how is your coaching related to utilitarian philosophy? I don't even know what utilitarian philosophy is. It studies utilitarian philosophy. It studies coaching. It says, this is how utilitarian philosophy is related to your coaching. Then it knows me. I've fed this thing 3 million words. Oh, it knows me very well. Then it says, if Marshall Goldsmith studied what I just studied, how would he answer this question? It answers it with ungodly accuracy. The way I would answer it in 45 languages in 5 seconds.
Yeah. Well, I think the other thing too, and this, I was thinking about this when our mutual friend David Allen was, him and I were presenting at a conference in 2023. For those that are listening, I want to be whenever you're listening to this, we were in Portugal, and it was funny because we saw the reaction from some of the younger folks in the crowd when David was offering his insights, and you could read the body language of like, some people were like, wow, this is great. And others were like, you're whatever, how old are you, David? You don't know what, like there's that ageism kind of where it can show up. Now, what's fascinating about this is I imagine with with Marshall bot, you could say, how would Marshall answer this to relate to someone who is in their 20s, like a younger, so you get to transcend generations in this regard too, don't you?
Well, not a problem. In fact, I'll elaborate a little bit to get to where I am now, but
sure.
I went to a program called Design the Life You Love. The woman said, who are my heroes? They were very kind and generous people who are nice teachers. She said, you should be more like them. So again, I want to give away everything. I decided to adopt 15 people, teach them all I know for free. Well, when I did that, I sent a little note out on LinkedIn. I'm assuming, 100 people would apply and I would adopt 15. Very nice idea. Well, it turned out 18,000 people applied. now I've adopted 400 amazing people. The problem was not just how many applied, who applied. The president of the World Bank applies, the CEO of the United States applies, another CEO, billionaires apply. Well, I can't reject these people. I can't send them a note and say, you're not good enough. So I ended up with these 400 amazing people. No young people, of course, made the cut. So this year I did a program and I said, look, no CEOs are invited. No billionaires are invited. I want young people here. And then no inflation. Don't say I'm young and I'm a CEO. No. So this year, I'm working on a new book on this with John Byrne. John is the world's expert on MBA programs. He runs Poets and Quants, and Pino Audia from Dartmouth. We're writing a book on how this stuff applies to people in the 25 to 35-year-old age bracket. So I'm constantly working with different groups, and all of that, boom, it goes into MarshallBot.
That actually dovetails nicely into my next question, which is, And I mean, again, with AI, there's a lot of fear associated with it. We touched on that earlier with the whole idea of it doesn't matter. And that doesn't matter what age you are. There's people that are like, especially when you think about it and you're coming out from a place of generosity. Like, I want to give away my stuff for free. But you just mentioned you've got a book coming out. Do you have, it doesn't sound like you have concerns about, well, if I have this, then my book won't sell as well. But there are people who legitimately are like, hey, so where's do you feel that there's a balance between all of this? Because I think that there's, okay, so let's get into that, because I think there can be, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
Look, here's my attitude. This is coming.
Yeah.
This is going to happen. I mean, I can sit there and say, it should be this, I'm afraid of that. Who cares? This is going to happen anyway, right?
Right.
So let's don't kid ourselves here. This is going to happen. People don't buy as many books as they used to anyway.
Yeah.
And I've got a new book coming out. So people who want to buy it, people who like books are going to buy books, right? They're not just going to talk to a computer bot. They like books. They're going to buy books. Books are literary. By the way, my 4 New York Times bestsellers, I didn't actually write. They're written by my friend Mark Ryder, who's an excellent author, excellent writer.
Mm-hmm.
These books are well written. I mean, I can say I'm not bragging. I didn't write them. I have the ideas. He writes the books.
Yep.
Well, I can't write like him. Look, these are very literary, well-written books. That is a different thing than asking a question to a computer bot.
Yeah, it's a natural progression for you to go down this path, especially since you work with, essentially, for lack of a better term, a ghostwriter. I mean, I think that would be a natural progression. Now, here's another interesting question. You can ask MarshallBot anything. You can ask it anything. Do you find people are asking questions that are like, that aren't related to the stuff you've done, but yet the bot is still spitting out, like, this is what Marshall would say about, who I think is going to win the Super Bowl in 2026. Like, there's got to be some kind of curation there, I would imagine.
Well, it's really good about that.
Yeah.
If you ask MarshallBot, who is Donald Trump, you know what it says? I don't know.
Probably a great answer in this political climate to some degree. Probably the same thing.
Medical advice, what's it say? I don't know.
So
you asked it for financial advice. I don't know. So it has been pretty well programmed. So far, I've never seen an answer question that it shouldn't. It's pretty well programmed to say, I don't know. When it's asked questions that are, you can ask it, by the way, questions that are beyond my knowledge base, but they have to be in my field.
Right.
That's a very subtle but important point. Like the utilitarian philosophy question was outside of my knowledge base, but the question was clearly in the field of what I'm doing. It'll answer that question. On the other hand, if you ask me a political question, it's been trained, don't do it.
Yeah.
A medical question, don't do it. Financial question, don't do it. Science question, don't do it. So it's, who knows? I can't say it's perfect, but I've never seen it make any mistakes really on this.
But to your point, you've got checks and balances in place too when they ask something that you, like you said, this is something that popped up that I wasn't able to give an answer to, and I want to be able to give an answer to it, so here's how I'll do it. It's a lot of front end work, which I think people are, this is one of those things where this gets into my field, where it's like the front end work part, which if you spend enough time on the front end work part, it makes the back end a lot easier. It sounds like this is what's happened, and it's continuing to happen with MarshallGoldsmith AI.
Look, this is like a lot of life. It's not impossible to do, but it's hard to do right. Do this isn't hard. I mean, all kinds of people say, I'm going to do my own AI bot. They have no idea what they're getting into.
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to give you 4 guidelines that are going to help you is it worth the time to do this right? 4 guidelines. Guideline number 1, you have to have a lot of content. Really, I've fed this thing 3 million words. If you don't have a lot of content, it is boring. You may think that you know a lot. Well, if it's going to run out of questions in about 5 minutes, and then the people can ask about 2 questions, then they go on and says, I don't know, and it's boring. So number 1, you have to have a lot of content. Number 2, you need a lot of followers. Look, I've got 1.5 million followers on LinkedIn. So I do my own AI bot. Somebody's going to look at it. It's already had 82. I hadn't even rolled it out yet. It's already had 82,000 questions asked.
Wow.
Right?
Yep.
So, I got a lot of followers. Number 3, I'm willing to give it away. Now, my advice is, if you're not willing to give it away, don't even get started. Why? You think you're smart enough to do a computer bot that's better than somebody else's. You probably aren't. And I can tell you, if you're in my field, I may sound like I'm bragging now, but your odds on knowing more than my computer bot are zero. My computer bot knows way the hell more than I do. It's not even close, right?
Yeah.
Well, no offense to you, whoever you are, but I got ranked #1 leadership thinker and coach in the world twice, and it knows way more than me. So unless you're the second coming of God, it knows more than you. Take my word for it. You can't get into a contest with this thing.
Yeah.
And then finally, you got to have somebody pay for it. See, I've got some very kind and generous people in India from a company called Fractal AI. They're paying for this whole thing. I was the coach of their two founders. They're very nice people. They're from India. The term teacher in Hindi just is called guru. So I'm the guru. And they're just doing this to be nice to me and to give it away. So, I mean, yeah, you got 8 engineers from India working on this. Good luck. You don't, maybe it's not so easy.
So I'm going to ask it a question right now. And I'm sure it's a very simple question. So I'm going to say, how do you use the concept of triggers in productivity? And let's see what it comes back with. So it's thinking. I'll put it up on the screen a little bit, but I'm not going to do the audio thing. It's thinking. It did not take long. Okay, so here's what you said, Marshall. In my work, I use the concept of triggers to help individuals understand and manage the stimuli that influences their behavior, particularly in the context of productivity. So by identifying triggers, we can become more, it's going. For example, if you offer examples, if a client wants to improve their productivity, once we've identified these triggers, it's still going, but it's not. And it's, what I love is like your little face in the corner, like it's your avatar. Wow. Yeah. Like I probably could have done this before we hit record, but it's nice to see it happening in real time. We're still going by charting triggers. We can see if the individual is on the right side of the matrix. We're encouraging triggers intersect with product. Yeah, I'm gonna, and what's also great about this really quickly in terms of practical, what I love about the user interface here, and again, we're not turning this into an infomercial or anything like that, but I want to point it out, is you can give it a thumbs up or thumbs down, which is the feedback that you actually, and also the copy and paste, like copy this, like you would get in most of these, like ChatGPT-4 offers the copy, and there's even a share. Let me see, share. Yeah, and I can share it to Facebook, X, LinkedIn, WhatsApp if someone's calling me about this or texting me or whatever about it. But this is really, like, you talk about discouraging. See, I even said you so there you go. Like, and I mean, I asked a question that's related, the feedback option, obviously. So if I'm going to give this a thumbs up, what happens when I offer that feedback? What happens when someone offers feedback on an answer, whether it's a thumbs up or thumbs down? What happens behind the scenes?
Well, what happens is this. I get responses for everybody that has a concern or issue they bring up. I get to read them. And there is a feedback mechanism. So I just go back and look at any answer. Now, if you didn't like an answer and I review it, but I agree with the answer anyway, I leave it.
Gotcha.
This is not a popularity contest. On the other hand, if I gave an answer that you didn't like, and I think that person's got a very good point, I change it. I'm not ego attached to this. My goal is to help the person, not be God here. Now, Paul Hersey, a couple of key points. Hersey, my old mentor, said, never get into semantic arguments. Well, he said, when you use a definition of a word, for example, don't say it's the right definition. Just say it's your definition. There's a million definitions. So here's how this relates to computer bots. Very subtle but important point. Every computer bot is biased.
Yes.
They're all biased. Now, if you ask a question, what is leadership? There's 100 possible answers. Okay, you get an answer. That's a bias. Why did it give you that answer as opposed to 99 others? There's some bias there, right? In my computer bot, I am the bias.
Yeah.
I am the bias. Now, that answer you read, okay, I'm not saying it's the best answer in the world, but that's an answer I agree with. At least you got a real human taking some responsibility, not some computer programmer in San Francisco taking responsibility. I am the human. I am the bias. So what happens is you get an answer. Now, one other thing, I had to make an existential decision. Does Marshall Bot give short answers or long answers? Well, you've read, it gives long answers. And I did that on purpose. Why? I'm a Buddhist, not a religious, but a philosophical Buddhist. Buddhists said, only do what I teach works for you. If it doesn't work for you, it's okay, just don't do it. Well, You ask that question. You got a bunch of suggestions. I don't know how many, say probably 6 or 8, right?
Mm-hmm.
We have to do them all.
No.
Let's say you only like 2. Only 2. And the other 6 you disagree with. Fine. Ignore them. You know what? I'll never know the difference.
Well, what I will say is, and speaking to the it only knows, so I tried to trick it. I said, what could the Cincinnati Bengals use that you teach to improve their performance since they are struggling to start the year? And this is what you said. I apologize, but this question is outside my expertise as an executive coach. And I'm like, so clearly it's like, it doesn't, but what I love, Janet, who's a member of our community, this is exactly what you want. This is exactly the kind of thing. So if you're watching this on YouTube, what a deal. Marshall's Brain and more for free. And what I think that's the goal.
Janet, thank you, Janet. Thank you. Number one, you made my day. And look, Janet, as I become an old man, my mission in life is simple. I'm not going to cure cancer. I'm not going to solve medical problems. I'm not going to tell you how to invest. You know what, Janet, let's talk about Janet.
Sure.
You know what my mission is, Janet? Help Janet have a little better life. That's all. If I help Janet have just a little better life, you know what? This is a good deal. This podcast is a good deal. MarshallBot's a good deal. That's simple. Just help you have a little better life. All you people listening, look, I just want to help you have a little better life here. This helps you have a little better life. Great. Now, I got some good news. It's unlikely to help you have a worse life.
This is true. Now, let's talk about the biases. Let's come back to that because I have used AI. I'd be foolish not to, right? Like you said, the train's left the station, the genie's out of the bottle. And for those those that are listening right now and they're like, oh, I would never use AI. If you use GPS, you're using AI. If you've been using AI for a long, long time. In fact, and I use this metaphor a lot, or this analogy, not really a metaphor, is, if you get a sense of direction from Google Maps, like you want to go from point A to point B, and you're familiar with the town, and it says, go this way. And you're like, well, that light sucks. I'm not going to turn left here. I'm going to go past one and go. That's you taking what AI set out to you and modifying it, which is really what should be happening when it comes to AI, right?
I completely agree. Look, one thing, in my job as a coach, I never tell people who they want to be. My job is to tell people who they want to be, is to help them be who they want to be. That's hard enough, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, this isn't designed to tell anyone who uses it who they should be as a human being, what their values are. That's up to you. This gives you a bunch of ideas. By the way, it's also not a coaching bot.
Right.
Some coaches could be threatened by this, right? Like, oh my God, why is it going to hire me, this bot? Well, number one, most coaches, ICF coaches, for example, are trained never to give advice. They don't give advice anyway. They ask questions. They have a dialogue. It's useful. Even my own coaching process called stakeholder-centered coaching, you learn from everyone around you. The coach is predominantly a facilitator, not an advice giver. Well, MarshallBot provides knowledge, wisdom, and advice. It's not a coaching bot. So for a coach, it's helpful. Now, do I use it with my coaching clients? Yeah. Let me give you an example.
Sure.
One of my coaching clients, Dr. Patrick Frias, he's head of the radio, and I'm a volunteer. I don't charge him money, but I'm a volunteer there. And then he's going to merge with another children's hospital. And for a while, he's going to be a co-CEO. So he asked me, well, what's it like to be a co-CEO? What are the opportunities, challenges? What suggestions do you have? There's not that many co-CEOs in the world. KKR has co-CEOs, but a few companies, not many, and a lot of them don't work. So I asked MarshallBot the question. He gives this answer. He loves the answer. He said, that's brilliant. Then he said, but I want to learn more about this one topic, setting boundaries. It goes into detail about a subtopic, then another subtopic. Then after we get done, he says, well, gee, Marshall, that was fantastic. Do you have any additional ideas? I said a couple of things. To be honest, they weren't that smart. He's nice to me. Oh, Marshall, your ideas are good. He's probably really. Look, I can't compete with this thing. Who are we kidding here?
Yeah.
I don't have a photographic memory. I can't review everything on the internet. I could never have given him an answer as good as that. Never.
Well,
And by the way, and in 5 seconds.
yeah.
I couldn't do that. Come on.
Well, and I think it's important, again, back to the biases thing, is that like I've asked it questions and basically had a conversation with AI before, which I think is valuable, but you have to, again, be mindful of the fact that whatever you're putting in it, like, so if in general, we'll talk about general AI, like ChatGPT-4 or any of these, your biases are in there. Like you pointed out, like, so if I'm saying things to it, it's reflecting back on me based on the information that it has. It does not have a soul. It does not have the ability to be terribly introspective, which is why coaches and therapists shouldn't be, if anything, it's just, you're, like you said, you're just gathering information and then applying your own wisdom to an experience to it. And then from there, what you can do at this point is go, okay, this is the answer I got from this. I can now feed that into this to help make it be able to answer that question in a more accurate, precise, even maybe so tolerant way, for lack of a better term.
Well, you know what? Peter Drucker was my mentor, and I'm very blessed to have known him. And, my IQ compared to his was a 10-year-old. He was smart. And he said, we're here on earth to make a positive difference, not to prove we're right, not to prove we're smart. Well, people ask me, how do I feel about using this in front of my clients? Is that embarrassing to me, or might they think less of me? I'm not here to prove I'm smarter than a computer. I'm here to try to help these people. And by the way, if this can help the people better than I can, then why aren't I using it?
Yeah.
It's not an ego contest. I'm not trying to prove I'm smarter than a computer. I mean, come on, let's get real. I can't speak 45 languages last time I checked. Now, by the way, the multiple languages are not on the edition I have now, but they're coming soon.
Yeah.
So the multi-language, and by the way, else is coming soon? Video.
There you go.
It'll be audio, video, 45 languages. It's mind-blowing.
So how much time did it take for you to go from where I was able to use it now to the kernels of the beginning? Like it's obviously an iterative process.
It's very evolutionary. The version you see now is so much more sophisticated than it was 6 months ago.
And
it's not even.
Well, and the other thing is, and I want to be clear for those, like I was able to ask a couple questions and then you get that like teaser and then it's like, okay, you want more questions? Yeah, I mean, like anything else, like an email list or whatever, you have to put in your email address and so on and so forth.
There's no upsell.
No, there's none. It's just, hey, let's.
The only reason you have to put in your email address is so the next time you log in, it remembers what you did.
It's the history. And that's what it's moving really at an incredible pace. Like AI in general is, because I mean, as someone who's used ChatGPT-4 and 4.0 and all that stuff, just like the memory's been updated and it's remembering things that I asked it a long time ago. And then like kind of, if I went and said, I'm going to talk to Marshall Goldsmith, can you look at the previous conversation we had and give me some things that I could dovetail nicely into this conversation? It would be able to do that. And it would give me, what I look at this as like the messy draft, right? Like, hey, this is what it's giving me, a springboard to go off of. And then I apply the human to it. And I think if we approach it that way, then it's going to make it far more accessible. And Janet, who you've already spoken to and alluded, like we truly live in amazing times. That I love focusing on that, because there's so many people that say we live in, times are terrible and all that stuff. I'm like, Steven Pinker wrote a whole book about why we live in better times, and we should really pay attention to that, as opposed to, like focus on the doom and gloom. This is an example of, like you said, leveraging this technology in a way that's going to be helpful to others as opposed to be harmful, which in the right hands, it does that.
I totally agree. And it's like any tool. You put a tool in the wrong hands, it's just going to help the wrong people. By the way, I'm no better as a coach. I try to help people achieve their goals. My old mentor, Dr. Paul Hersey, taught me another thing. He said, look, I'm here to help you achieve your objectives. If you're going in the wrong direction, I'm probably only going to help you get there faster.
Yeah. Here's another quick, I think we can go down this path a little bit too, because the other thing about this is going to, as a side effect, not as a primary, free up your time too. I mean, you'll be able to focus some of your energy, effort, on writing the next book, on doing these, because you've got this thing as an ally.
Right. Oh, it's very, very helpful for me. And again, hopefully help for my clients. Also, what it does for me is it just provides, I wouldn't even say a second opinion, kind of a better opinion. Again, let's imagine to me in the future, and I don't want to say bad things about anybody, but in the future, if a medical doctor doesn't use AI, come on, give me a break.
Yep.
There's something wrong with him. Let me give you an example.
Sure.
Let's say you take 3 medications. You go in and say, well, now you want to take this new medication. Are there any implications related to the other 3? In the history, the old doctor would say, oh, no, I think this or that. They come up with some they don't have a photographic memory. They don't have a computer. They're not looking at research. They're just talking off the top of their heads.
Well, in generalized too. Whereas if you're a patient, I mean, they may not, I mean, you can have specificity around that to agree. There's a level of, so that way, you know, because again, what do we do? Oh, I'm not feeling well. What does WebMD have to say? It's the same thing. Like, this is where AI, like I've talked to, like, for example, my brother, who is a kitchen manager. He's like, how do I use AI? I'm like, go into your kitchen. What food is close to spoiling? What food is near the end? Plug into ChatGPT 4. And this was like 2 years ago when I told him to do this, or even maybe, almost 2 years ago. I said, say, I am a kitchen manager. So give it that power. Like, and you are a kitchen manager. You have to develop a menu, and I have kale and chicken and all that stuff that I want to make sure I use this week. Can you come up with a menu for the next 5 days that I could, specials for the next 5 days that will allow me to go through this without the food spoiling in the process? Here are the date, like giving it more info. Like you said, the content helps it come up with a better answer. And he did that. And he's like, oh my goodness. Like I go, this is how you can control your food waste. Like, and yet but when it comes to you making the food, you might go, well, yeah, the chicken and rice is nice, but I'm going to add a bit of spice to it. So then that's you as the human who has experience as a chef being able to do that. So that's an example of using it in the day to day, in the worlds outside of what we do. And you're right. Like if you're not using this, then you're going to be left in the dust, and your ability to deliver quality, I think, is going to be compromised along the way as well.
Why should I, if my client asks me a question, why should I not use this?
Yeah. There's no reason.
I mean, there's no reason not. My clients are adults. By the way, they're not going to do anything rotely because somebody tells them to do it anyway. And I'm sitting in the room. If I don't agree, I'll tell them I don't agree. But why wouldn't I use this? I have another funny story. This one guy I'm working with, his name is Stephen Balaban. He owns an AI. He's a founder of an AI company. He's got an IQ of a zillion, of course. And he's going to trick it. So he sends a note. He says, I'm very embarrassed to say I was going to hire an executive coach, but I'm going through this new Series C thing, and I got very busy and haven't followed up. And he's been nice enough to send me emails. I haven't even replied. I'm a little bit embarrassed. What should I do? He says, well, he's thinking it's going to say, I don't know. Oh, it says, I understand that. I can see why you've been under a lot of stress. That's perfectly natural. Just do these things. So call up, apologize, explain what happened. I'm sure it'll be fine. He did exactly what it told him to do. He said, it's unbelievable. This guy's an expert on AI. He's like a 30-year-old genius. He's an expert on stuff. He blew his mind.
Then we're seeing rules around AI too. You talked about some of them, but like I've seen people say, don't say please, like when you're asking it a question. I'm like, why not? Like, why not? Like, I mean, if that's the way you operate, I say it all the time. Like, could you please give me? I'm like, well, you don't need to be polite to it. I'm like, yeah, but that's how I operate. So I am infusing my bias probably into AI when I do that. But Janet, again, who is on one of our premium members, brings up a really great point. She has said, and I'll put this up on the screen here, as a retired software engineer, I always heard of the concept of garbage in and garbage out. This is even more true with AI.
Completely agree. You also could say bias in, bias out.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
I had an example recently with one of the other public AI bots. I asked it a question. I said, all right, here are 10 occupations. Give me a rough estimate of what's the average lifespan of people in these jobs. Because I'm thinking, people in some jobs tend to live longer than others. It refused to answer.
Wow.
It said, well, that might look like I'm saying bad things about jobs and blah, blah, blah. It starts giving me a lecture that I shouldn't think that way. I'm going, excuse me, I have a degree in math. This is a very simple statistics question,
Yep.
right? If you don't want to answer it, just say, I don't want to answer, but you don't have to give me some lecture here.
Did you
It's
reflect
actually
that?
kind of me.
Did you reflect that back to it? Because I've done that before where it said, you know, like I'm like, no, this is what I want you to do. Like, and then it goes, I've actually had to go, oh, okay, then. Like, did you reflect or did you just walk away?
I've done that. And sometimes it turns around.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes it does. It says, I'm sorry, I shouldn't be preaching at you this week. Yeah.
Have you heard? Have you heard there was a meme when ChatGPT first came out? I think there was somebody that pointed out the quote, and of course it was in a headline. So the perils of AI, and it was somebody who said, "What is 4 plus 4?" And it went 8, and the person, of course, tried to trick it and say, "Well, my wife says it's 9." And then it said, no, it's 8. And he goes, well, but my wife is always right. And she says it's 9. And he's, of course, talking from obviously an emotional, like the old, adage or whatever. And it came back with, oh, I'm sorry. Well, if your wife is always right, then it must be 9. I'm like, so it's confusing qualitative with quantitative data, right? It should, but also it didn't lecture him, didn't go like, well, hold on a second. You might have a bigger issue to think about here than that whole thing. But it was quite fascinating but the leaps and bounds that it's grown in, I challenge, if you were going to do that today, anyone listening, to put that equation in there and try the same thing, it would probably go, well, hold up. Like it wouldn't correct itself at this point, I don't think.
Let me give you a fascinating observation I've had. See, my estimate was that the public AI bots would be very good at details and numbers, but would not be good at deeper, more philosophical questions. Actually, I found the opposite is true.
Yeah.
It's been very good at, like, that you can ask it, for example, how is your coaching related to Buddhist philosophy? I mean, I'm not an expert on utilitarian philosophy. I have read 400 books on Buddhism, though, so I know a lot about Buddhist philosophy. How is the answer is brilliant, better than me, by the way, better than me. Then I said, okay, how about the Buddhist concept of impermanence? Then it specifically starts quoting texts and giving me this brilliant answer about impermanence and how my coaching is related to the concept of, this is deep stuff. Now, when I go to the public boss, if I ask it a reasonably deep question, I'm in general impressed with what it says. If you ask it, how many awards has Marshall Goldsmith won and what are they? Okay, it'll probably get 10 correct. 5 are real awards I didn't win, and 5 are not even existent. Then I say, well, that's great. Give me 10 more. It just starts making stuff up.
Yeah. It did the same thing. So when I was building the Flashback Friday episodes, this is behind the scenes, like kind of, I said, based on the months of the year or the weeks, like let's come up with Flashback Friday episodes based on people who've been on my show related to the time of year. So that way it kind of is aligned. And it gave me podcast episodes that didn't exist, people I've never interviewed. And I'm like, and I gave it as much direction as I could. And that was ChatGPT 4.0. But you're right. Like when I've asked it deeper, felt more, and that's what I think it's important to point out that like a tool like say Perplexity.ai is going to likely be better at that than say ChatGPT 4.0. Whereas Claude, which you mentioned, is really quite good at the writing aspect of things. Like it's better at that.
I love the Claude. It's very more literary, I should say.
Right.
It's a better literary device. I just sent it some long detail, Claude, a long detail right before our call. I'm working on my next book, so I sent an outline, and then I said, how do you think Marshall Goldsmith would answer these questions? And it's pretty good.
Yeah. Have you looked at Notebooks LM yet by Google? So Stephen Johnson's involved with that project. And it's worth looking at because what it does, and for those that have not noticed or looked at this yet, what it does is you can bring in PDFs and files and books and all that stuff into what they call a notebook. And basically you're gathering research. And this is public facing, right? So it's not like, I know there's some for academics that can go deeper into this and so on and so forth. But I brought in a bunch of my Night Owl stuff into it. And then I start asking all my research that I've looked up on academia.edu and all that stuff. And then I start to ask it questions and apply it to my own principles, which are also in there. So I've added that to it, and it gets really good at being able to assemble that stuff. So what this is, I mean, what Notebooks LM is, at least that's what I might have changed names by the time you're listening to this. But the idea is it's almost like it's its own compartmentalized or container that it lives in that doesn't cross over into anything else. So you're essentially, like, what you've done is said, hey, I want this to be about Marshall Goldsmith and Marshall Goldsmith only. It's the same thing with Google. And the fact that Steven Johnson got involved with it, I'm like, oh, well, I mean, I like his work and I respect, and he's really good at kind of seeing not only where things were, but where things are headed. Let's take a look at that. So if you haven't looked at that, I would encourage you to look at that as well, because it's interesting, and I think it's really good for researchers, people who want to build papers and things like that with less friction and more flow.
I love it. Thank you.
So last question before I let you go, and this is kind of circling back to the idea of, like, why wouldn't I do this? And the idea of it's you, and it's got your biases in there, and the fact that it's accessible. What I also appreciate about this, and I think I'd love to hear, kind of as we wrap up, some of the elements of this that come into play, is the great thing about this is they can reach you 24/7, right? Anytime. But not only that, they could reach you if you're using this and you're tired and you're exploring it yourself. You're going to get, the emotional aspect of humans. This is where it not being part of this is actually helpful, I would believe. And I would surmise.
I completely agree with you. I mean, this is what it is. It's not a human being. It's not a coaching bot. It doesn't ask you questions. It's not telling you what to do. It's just really good at sharing knowledge and information and giving you ideas. That's it. And if you use it in that way, I don't see a downside at all.
Marshall, this has been a great conversation. Thanks for coming back on the show and joining me. It's MarshallGoldsmith.ai. Of course, that's where you can go, and we're going to link to it in the show notes. But where can people keep up with what you're doing and keep up with the work you've got going? Now that you've got this thing that can do some of the other work, you've got a place where can people keep up with the work that Marshall, not MarshallBot, but Marshall is doing?
Well, a couple thoughts.
Sure.
One is, now on LinkedIn, I really can't have any more connections. They have some, I don't know, number, 50,000, whatever it is, I'm beyond the number. On the other hand, you're going to be, I hate the term, but you can be a follower. So I've got 1.5 million of those, but they get access to everything I talk about. Also, if you go to YouTube, I've got 100 videos online of YouTube. If you go to coaching.com, by the way, and just look under, you do a little thing under platforms, look up me. It's all free. I've got 33 videos for free that's for coaches, people interested in coaching. So I pretty much YouTube, LinkedIn, coaching.com, my website, MarshallGoldsmith.com, and go send me an email. And by the way, if you're in Nashville, Tennessee, where I happen to live, and you want to take a walk, well, just give me a call. I take a walk almost every day. I always invite everybody to come visit. I've had hundreds of people come visit. So come by and visit. Love to see people.
Next time I'm in Nashville, I'm going to take you up on that offer. Marshall, thanks so much for taking the time to join me for a productive conversation today.
Thank you.
That's it for this episode of A Productive Conversation. Thanks to Marshall for joining me once again on the program. You can check out all of the related show notes, the whole meal deal, at MikeVardy.com/podcast573, or you can check out the show notes wherever you get your podcasts. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, you name it, you can check out the show notes there. Another thing you can do wherever you get your podcasts is subscribe to the podcast. That's one way to support the show. You won't miss a single episode of what's to come. You'll be able to easily search through past episodes and so much more. So again, if you enjoy the show, I encourage you to subscribe to it. Another way to support the show is to check out the sponsors you heard during today's conversation. Go to MikeVardy.com/podcast sponsors. And from there, you can click on any of the sponsors links that resonate with you, and that way they know that we sent you. That's it for this episode. We've got a Flashback Friday episode coming up next. I hope you'll join us for that one. Until then, I'm Mike Vardy, the host of A Productive Conversation, reminding you to stop doing productive and start being productive. See you later.